Now allow me to jump to another important issue related to what we are developing as one of the important issues and topics that will be for sure one of the reasons we will work with the other partners. European universities, language policies, on the ground. Before giving the role to my good friend and colleague Raul Sanchez, I would love to underline an important issue in relation to this topic. He will talk about a very specific issue, and I will provide you with a small, in 5 minutes, with a vision which is linked directly to what the, let's say, the language policy of the university is as it is. Of course, one of the main, let's say, part of what the University of Salamanca is developing is related directly to Spanish language. We have a very strong department, and at the same time we have also a specific school at the university where we teach per year for about an average of 8,000, 7,000, until 11,000 students who come to Salamanca experience an excellent experience learning the Spanish language in a very practical way. Said that also we are talking about languages. Our deputy minister this morning has underlined the importance of multilingualism. And Salamanca has started many years ago with this needed policy. We teach currently at the Faculty of Philology 23 different languages. So we have a big experience in that sense, and this is why somehow the University of Salamanca is leading this third, let's say, important pillar of what EC2U is developing. Quality education. The 23 languages are not only Indo-European languages per se. We combine both, let's say, important parts, Indo-European languages and Semitic on the other side. Even we are trying now to include Hamito-Semitic languages. I could give you I could provide you with many information, but I'm not going to bore you with the whole process of the different structures and so on. But just allow me to tell you that we are really fostering the learning of languages at our university because we have discovered many, many years, even centuries ago, the importance of the sharing views, ways of thinking that are only possible to make them available to our neighbors and to our colleagues through the language. This is why the combination of different languages and learning at the same time 2 or 3 or even 4 languages at the Faculty of Philology is one of our strengths. What my colleague is going to focus on is going to be a totally different branch of what a linguistic research project can represent. But allow me to take you back a bit, because he will talk about symbols, signs, that probably not are considered as, as a fundamental part of the modern research groups, where both sides, symbols and language, are connecting in a very special way. Symbols are somehow, if you go back to the first signs of the scripture, they were symbols. Just have a look at the Mesopotamian, Assyrian, Babylonian writing system, Egyptian, Luvian, and so on. You will see at the beginning there were only symbol signs that were connecting the different society strata within those aspects where symbol has become a kind of communication. And we are at a university level where we see many symbols that are used, but we don't really give the importance they deserve. And this is why, for sure, our colleague, Raul Sanchez, will talk about language policies on the ground. This will be the one, foreign languages or language didactics, translation studies, computer sciences applied to the linguistic, and he will also insist on the education policies that have been still mentioned. So I'm not going to focus on what he is going to talk about, but what, in my opinion, is absolutely needed, not only at a local level or regional or national level, but at an international level, is this synergies between the societies through the language. But we have to learn them. And the best place where the languages can be learned in a structured way, in a professional way, let's say, is the university. And this is why the humanities must take this part of education as a serious issue, because the unique way where we can really create this connection, synergies between even the countries, our continent, is combined by so many different languages. But if we want to know about each other, if we want to learn about each other, the best way, as our Deputy Minister has underlined this morning, is through the language. And we don't have other chance. This is why we are happy to have an expert in the linguistics who manages, I can confess here, he doesn't like it. He is probably one of the fewest who knows so many languages at the University of Salamanca. But combined, Uralic languages with the Indo-European languages, and of course the modern ones, he speaks them so fluent that at the end we are so proud having him as not only colleague but as an expert at our university. So thank you, Raul, for accepting to give a conference or a communication, a short communication about a topic that honestly is not so sometimes so often studied at the university or academic level. So the role is yours. Thank you.
Dear Efrem, thank you very much for your words. I feel ashamed. Okay, so I have been asked to present a part of a language policy project which will be developed in the next 2 years in the framework of the EC2U Virtual Institute for Quality Education. As I have already said before, this project involves more than 15 researchers, and the research team members will analyze the current language policies in European universities from very different points of view. So that I can say that this is a truly interdisciplinary research project that will not only take a closer look at language policies of our 7 EC2U universities. Then I have already said that we will be examining language policy practices at Portuguese, Spanish, French, Italian, German, Romanian, Finnish, Dutch and Belgian universities. I will present a first approach to the landscape linguistics part of the project. The research we are currently developing, therefore, is both qualitative and quantitative and is aimed at overcoming some critical methodological issues I will refer to later on. So our main goal is to empirically describe the linguistic landscape of different types of European universities and to carry out an in-depth analysis of the current language policies in universities. And as you may imagine, examining university language policy practices on the ground involves lots of work. But I won't present now results because we don't have yet the results. We are beginning. So, you may have never heard of landscape linguistics as a research methodology. even if you are a scholar working in the humanities, you may not know exactly what landscape linguistics is and which research methods it applies. So please allow me to introduce you to the research field of linguistic landscapes. The research field of linguistic landscape, and I quote here Rector, is a specialization in applied linguistics, social linguistics, and language policy studies. And it may be one of the most pertinent ways of studying language policy practices on the ground. The aim of this relatively new branch of applied linguistics is to categorize and describe the linguistic items found in the public space. And I quote here Shohami. Shohami is one of the most important scholars working on linguistic landscapes. If you ask me what we understand under public space, I will not be able to answer your question in an exact manner. Landscape linguistics deals mostly with the public sphere where one or more languages or language communities interact with each other. In our concrete case, the public space is reduced to university campuses and university buildings. Since universities do usually have some kind of explicit or at least implicit language policy, examining the linguistic landscape of universities is a very appropriate way of assessing those language policies. We already have pioneering studies being conducted in the 70s and 80s, and also 90s. However, the research field involving linguistic landscapes has developed very quickly over the past 20 years following a study by Landry and Bourri in 1997, which could be described as seminal. Especially important were the two volumes published by Rector in 2006 and Shohami Rector in 2009, which paved the way for other edited volumes on linguistic landscape. We have also other very important and significant monographs, for example, Backhouse 2007, Blomart 2013, and Blackwood and Tuffy 2015, for example. And we have also the launch of the International Journal of Linguistic Landscape. So we have already publication on this sub-discipline of linguistics. So in short, landscape linguistics is a novel and hands-on way of assessing institutional language policies that can be applied to university language policy. So I would like now to present our first linguistic landscape-based approach for studying language policy and practices in European universities. Landscape linguistics studies from landscape linguistics dealing with universities are not that common. Among the few studies that have been so far published are those by Brown 2012, Pitkänen 2013, and this is a very important study on the linguistic landscape of Helsinki University. And we have more recently also another study by Need Seals last year, which is a volume dealing with the use of linguistic landscape for foreign language learning. So we have first studies. The empirical research we intend to do in the framework of the EC2U language policy project has one main characteristic which makes it distinct from those I have briefly described. It adopts a comparative perspective. That means that it examines the public sphere, the public space of several universities located in several European countries and compares the results considering the different language legislations that apply at a local, regional, and even in some cases, national level. This is the case, for example, the case of Belgium or the case of Finland. So this project, therefore, adopts a different approach to the bulk of published studies that compare linguistic landscapes. But our study faces several methodological issues that are typical of research into linguistic landscapes. These issues largely involve the collation of and classification of visual material. For example, we have the definition of the units of analysis, the classification of the signs found in the linguistic landscape, and the representative nature of the corpus created. And I will try now to outline the challenges we are facing. So one of the key issues of the so-called problem of sampling involves defining the units of analysis. Von Menzel-Darkin, following other studies by Senos-Horter, consider each establishment they photograph to be a unit of analysis. In our case, that will be one university building. This is, in our case, of course, not possible. We have too many signs, posters, printing materials, etc. in one university building. The empirical study we are planning is based on the more textual definition that Backhaus makes of sign in his study on the linguistic landscape in Tokyo. And the definition is any piece of written text within a spatially definable frame. That means that each sign will be counted as one item. This approach has been widely used in many studies, and it takes into consideration all visible and maybe repeated linguistic items found in a given public or semi-public space. It thereby allows more accurately defining the urban linguistic landscape. In most cases, it is easy to determine the units of analysis. Sometimes, however, although the spatial boundaries are more or less clear, it is more complicated to reach a decision on the number of units of analysis they form. A good example of this involves the monolingual signs that are clearly defined spatially and repeated in two or more languages. Yeah, such as the example, if I may go. You don't see it, of course, but this is, we have here two information posters at a door of an office in the Faculty of Economics and Social Sciences from the University of Cologne in Germany. One is in German, the other one is in English. From a spatial perspective, these are two separate units of analysis, that is, two different items, a monolingual one in German and another one in English. Nevertheless, and so as not to distort the linguistic reality, both these posters could be considered one for practical purposes. It could be then classified as bilingual in English and in German. So a further methodological issue involves the classification of signs. The bulk of studies on linguistic landscapes feature a classification that differentiates between top-down and bottom-up signs, or accordingly to the methodology, the terminology used by Backhaus, official and non-official signs. That means regulated and unregulated sign posting. Ben Raphael et Ali, they describe this classification, which we could consider now traditional, with some detail in a study on the construction of the public language domain in Israel. It is essential in our case to differentiate between top-down and bottom-up signs, as one of these studies' main objectives is to determine the degree of compliance with the language policies adopted by the European universities. These language policies may be embedded in regional and national language legislation, such as in Belgium, or also in some Spanish regions like Catalonia, or not, like here in Salamanca, for example. So we will therefore first begin by identifying all the players involved in the distinction between top-down and bottom-up signs, as Spolsky recommends. An initial differentiation could be made based on what Spolsky refers to as the initiator or owner of the sign, for which, for most universities, it is the rectorate or a faculty or department. Top-down signs are the respective responsibility of the departments, faculties, and university administrations. The so-called sign maker is usually not identified in these cases. The sign maker is usually an administrative staff member, in most cases somebody from the general administration, from the dean's office, or even in the case of departments, a secretary. The sign maker does not seem to be very relevant for our language policy approach, except maybe if we are assessing the quality of the foreign language signage. So possible mistakes may reflect the competent language authorities' lack of interest in maintaining linguistic standards in the foreign language or languages. Insofar as Spolsky's reader is concerned, the recipient of the signs is not only the local university communities, that is, local students, teaching staff, and administrative staff, incoming students or foreign students and visiting teaching staff and researchers are also the recipient of the signs, particularly of those written in foreign languages. And we should not forget the local population, as well as foreign tourists visiting one of our historic buildings. But we may face here another problems, since communications and signs notices for tourists may not be subject to internal language policy legislation at some universities. This may be also true in the case of externalized services like university cafeterias or canteens. So anyway, it is crucial to work out a well-designed sign taxonomy to classify the signs that are the responsibility of each administrative level. So the general administration or the rectorate, faculties, and maybe also departments. The taxonomy I will present in the following minutes is based on my own observations in several European campuses. I will distinguish 4 possible sign owners. First, the general university administration overseen by the rector or president of the university. Second, the faculty administration overseen by the dean. Third, the international office overseen by the head of the international office. Fourth, the main university library overseen by the director of the library. The university language policy, explicit or not, can be the sole responsibility of the general university administration for all university services, faculties, and spaces. It is generally part of the internationalization strategy. However, as it is usually the case, it can also be part of competencies of the dean, the head of the international office, or the director of the library. And having this in mind, we will empirically analyze the signage in 5 distinct spaces: the main university campus, the main university building, the international office, the Faculty of Economics, which is usually one of the most popular ones among students and is present at most universities, including universities of applied sciences, and also, of course, the main library. And this is, of course, field work, so we will visit, and if possible, with permission, of course, take pictures of all signs encountered in these semi-public spaces. So, taxonomy. The top-down signs that the general administration is responsible for involve the following type of signage. So first, regarding the outdoor campus signage, we can find campus map signs, orientation, that is wayfinding signs, brand image signs, institutional ads. So for example, we see here a monolingual orientation sign on a campus of the University of Poitiers. You see here institutional ads and brand image signs on the central campus of the University of Pavia, also monolingual. And this is this slide. In this slide, you can see a brand image sign in front of the main building of the University of Turku. So, in the main administration building, we can see building map signs, building and floor directory signs, orientation signs, brand image signs, room identification signs, office hour signs, of notice board for staff, for students, toilet signs, safety and evacuation signs, nameplates, institutional ads, also flyers and printed materials, so lots of signs. And most of these signs could also be found in the International Relations Office and in the Faculty of Economics, as we will see in the following pictures. So we see here, you don't see it clearly, I know, I apologize for that. So we see here two signs at the main entrance of the Faculty of Economics of the University of Salamanca. The bigger one is in Spanish, the smaller one is in English. And here there is a monolingual building and floor directory sign at the Faculty of Economics of the University of Coimbra. You see here a roll-up, which I have problems classifying, maybe a mixture of an institutional ad and brand image sign. It refers to an event organized by the European Alliance for Well-being in Cologne past week. And here you see an office hour sign at the main door leading to the international office also of Cologne University. And the university library is also very interesting. In the university library here, which is in Iași, University of Iași, there could be in these libraries also very important science like help desk, library science, borrowing, instruction science, so lots of them. So as you see, this taxonomy is differentiated according to, let's say, university administrations, and this taxonomy allows a very detailed analysis. So, analysis of bottom-up science, these are the science of a private nature that are not subject to any language regulation. Yeah? This analysis of bottom-up science may be quite discordant with the language profile of science. Why? Because they tend to be governed by different criteria. It is the unregulated signposting, and this unregulated signposting may be shaped by private persons, by companies, yeah, but they will also fall into the scope of the intended empirical research. I really hope the classification of this type of science proposed here reflects the linguistic and social reality of the survey areas. We may have here very different owners of the sign. For example, outdoor on the campus, we may see ads, external ads in the university. We may see stickers, graffiti, other signs. So it could be really different. And inside the university buildings, that is, for example, in the main university building, in the faculties, in the international office, or also in the library building, we could see very different types of bottom-up signs. For example, short-term notices written by staff, so I will come in 10 minutes. They are generally handwritten. External ads, internship ads, also toilet graffiti, which is very interesting. Mostly, of course, they are students, but you never know. Stickers, and also non-institutional flyers and printed material. So, for example, here, handwritten short-term notice. This is the University of Vienna. Yeah. Notice board, lots of signs in different languages. So these bottom-up categories involve, of course, a more personal choice of language or languages. And precisely herein lies their importance. Through a thorough analysis of the language practices of this bottom-up science will allow us to compare the real language use of students, staff, and the society in general, compare these groups with the official language policy practices in the universities. So I have now presented the two main challenges, the problem of sampling and the classification of science. The third major methodological issue we face is the creation of the corpus. The debate over the application of a quantitative or qualitative method is inherent to the research field of linguistic landscape studies, and this debate has even been the main focus of some articles like Horta 2013, as with Blackwood, for whom the discussion on the application of quantitative and qualitative approaches is both unhelpful and reductive. I think this is, I share this opinion. So this project has chosen to combine both methods in a symbiotic manner. So on the one hand, the comparative quantitative method is based on counting and classifying all the linguistic landscape signs written in each language or in several languages found in clearly demarcated and similar survey areas, and this will provide a statistical data of a comparable nature between the surveyed universities. But on the other hand, the qualitative method, based on observation and reflecting upon the structured data obtained through the quantitative method, will enable us to better understand the use of languages in the linguistic landscape analyzed, and of course their relationship with the university language policies currently in force. And I come now to the final remarks. Obviously, we cannot present results yet. We are at the beginning of our research activity. In this presentation, I have only attempted to partially describe and discuss the methodology and the problems we may be facing in the landscape linguistic part of the EC2U research project on university language policy, which, I repeat, is only one of the research activities that will be developed inside this institutional project. The empirical results that we may obtain can hopefully give an accurate idea of the language policy practices of the European universities on the ground and help us prepare and implement an internationalized signage strategy at our universities. We are no more national universities. We are building a true European campus of city universities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Sanchez, dear Raul. As I told you, it was an exciting and innovative topic, which is not usually dealt in a, how would I say, normal way in the halls and the classes of academic life. So thank you again for your original contribution and excellent conference. And I think we are now arriving to the end of the morning. I know that once our stomach is demanding, then the brain will just stop listening. And this is why we are going to stop here. We are going to have our lunch. And thank you for your attention. Thank you for your participation. And afterwards, we are going to continue with our sessions in the afternoon. Thank you again.